music. He's like love, 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 and music. La la la, love, 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 and music. Love, love.
Hello. I be getting so caught off guard sometimes, people. Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. I am Jay Lee. This is Jay Lee's Corner. This is my review for Iyanla, episode 2. Now, this one is when she was working with Memphitz, who we all know as Toya Wright's ex-husband, and Toya Wright is who? Lil Wayne's ex-wife. Memphitz also is K. Michelle's ex, and was caught up in that whole scandal thing of her saying that he jumped on her and beat her, and it was a whole messy mess of a mess. So he is on this particular show because his mother called because his ass is kind of out of control a little bit. But I feel like, wasn't he out of control a while ago? Like, is he just not getting out of control? I was a bit confused with the timing of him being on the show, just because I feel like when all that stuff was going on was when he was kind of flipping out and doing different things, and I heard rumors or whatever. So it's like that was a couple years ago, because him and Toya have been divorced, because she didn't divorce, got pregnant, all the other stuff. But I feel like I wish he would have got help sooner, but sooner, later, as long as it's happening. So his mom, Frances, called the show to get him some help because he is basically out here on drugs. Like, he ain't out there like sucking dick for dollars to smoke crack or whatever, but he is doing like weed and Molly and ecstasy or Xanax and all that stuff, and cocaine and stuff. So he's still on them drugs and stuff, girl. And so the mom is saying how things for him changed when he was around 19, and her husband, his father, who they had been married at that point in time for 26 years, was murdered by a member of the KKK. And I said, that happened in 2001. So to even know that is in 2001, there were actually people out here, because he was shot, dismembered, and burned to death in 2001. And again, Memphitz was only 19 years old. Mom brought up how they even never got the ashes of his body to have a proper burial, and how they didn't even have a memorial service for him till it was 3 years after it had happened. I'm just like, I was completely shocked because of all the things I've ever heard of him. How people do stuff and then they bring up things that they passed. You know what I'm saying? They're like, well, see, so-and-so whose father was murdered. Like, I'd never heard that. So I was completely shocked to hear the details of it, because I was just shocked, honestly. She brings about he was extremely close to his father, but that when it happened, he kind of never talked about it. He never told anyone about it, and he kind of moved away and went to school, and kind of just blocked it all off and just never spoke about it, and kind of just went on about his way. And, Mom brings up how, one thing about it was when the trial went on, because the person who did it was arrested and was sentenced and did go to prison. I don't know how much time he got. That part I forgot to look up, and they didn't say how much time he got on here. But, Mom said how she did not want the kids because Miff has a younger sister. The younger sister or him, she's like, I didn't let them come to the trial. And then Iyanla was like, why didn't you do that? They needed that for closure as far as their father being murdered. And she said she didn't want them to hear the gruesome details about how their father left this earth. I mean, because Memphitz currently is 40. His sister is 33. And this happened 16 years ago. So, if he was 19 at the time, and they are 7 years different. So the daughter was 12. So I get that maybe not having a 12-year-old there. I completely get that. But Memphis was 19 years old. I think he should have been able to do that, especially if you are now the man of the family or whatever. But she said, no, I just didn't want them there. I just didn't want them to hear the details. I do think it's gruesome to hear, that he was shot, cut up, and burned. Like, I was just like, bitch, I just, the evilness of some people based on race still astonishes me to this day, that people still think like that. Because 2001 was like yesterday. I graduated from high school in 2000, so that's just crazy. Because that means we went the same age, because he was 19. Wait, he 40, I'm 36. Okay, who cares? Look, yeah. Anyway, so yeah, it was just crazy to me. Is he really 40? Because in 2001, I was 19. So how the hell can he be 40 and I'm 36? That math don't add up. Look, that just messed with my head. Because on the TV, it said he was 40. It said Memphis, he's 40 years old. But I don't know. Because if it happened in 2000 when he was 19, that math just did not add up in my head. I'm sorry, it just popped in my head. Because I'm like, we ain't the same age. Anywho, we're going to leave that alone. So, Iyanla is just bringing up how she should have let the kids be there to get closure on how he died. I agree with that. I also don't agree with that. I think it's a mother's choice to decide if she wants her children to have gruesome details of certain things. You can tell your child, your father was murdered. He was murdered. He was shot and he was burned. And maybe not have to have them hear details in court. Because at a trial, they give all kind of, they give testimony. Sometimes they have pictures, so I can get her not wanting her kids to see that, hear that, speak about that. She brings up how she just wants to kind of help her son heal and don't want him to basically die from the demons of the situation. And I can completely, get how she is wanting to have that for him. We do see Iyanla talk to Memphitz, and I feel two ways about this episode. One, it was very difficult for me to watch this episode simply because, as y'all, I think some of y'all may know, my father passed away in 2015. So things with me and people talking about their fathers dying, like, it's always so, like, I cried, I cried a lot during this episode, and let's hope I don't cry during this thing on review. But he seems completely closed off. So I'm wondering, is he closed off because he's not really open to wanting to help? Or is this a ploy to just be on another reality show? I'm not sure. He brings up how his life changed when his father died. And then y'all are like, your father didn't die. Because he did not. Your father was murdered, was murdered by the KKK. And she said, like, your father was murdered. He was shot and dismembered and burned, by a white man who didn't like him just because he was black. So she kind of smacked him in the face with the truth that he isn't able to say. And I think sometimes it is difficult for children to say how their parent left this world or whatever. I can remember when my dad died, it was hard to say, when my dad died of a massive heart attack out the blue. Like, no warning, no nothing. It was completely, that was just hard to say. So and that was just 3 years ago. So it's been 16 years since his father was murdered, So it was weird to see, not weird, it was telling to see how he couldn't even say what really happened to his father. And he says, like, to cope with it and to kind of numb himself and to not think about it, he does drugs to just not feel nothing or to feel normal in his head. He brings up how he did weed, Molly, coke, and Xanax. Now, I've only done one of those. Smoked a little bit of weed long time ago. I've never been a person to want to do any other drugs because I feel like any other drug you do, it gets you closer to crack. And I don't ever want to smoke crack because, what I'm saying, I just can't. I just don't think I think crack is whack. I'm with Whitney Houston with that. And, so he's saying how he actively did those drugs or do those drugs, and those are his drugs of choice. He then brings up, I worked my way up to the top, and it was hard for me to also deal with the fact that my ex lied on me and I lost everything. He consistently blames K. Michelle, honestly, and they kept bleeping out girlfriend. I don't know if he said her name, but every time he said my bleep, they bleeped it out. So, but I knew what they were talking about K. Michelle. So he kept saying how his ex lied on him and he lost everything, and he kind of blames her for that. That whole thing with him and K. Michelle, K. Michelle, they were dating at the time. This is way before Love and Hip Hop. Because Memphitz was supposedly who worked with her. It's the person who helped her get prettier, so to speak. Like he got her teeth fixed and some other little thing. I think he maybe got her boob job or whatever. But she accused him of beating her, and he denied the allegation, saying he was not beating her. That I think she jumped on him, and to defend himself, he maybe pushed her off. It was craziness, where it was a lot of he say, she say. It was a lot of things where people who did not believe K. Michelle would then go at them, like, how the fuck and it was a big messy ass mess of some shit. So he did lose a lot of his professional things. He was a record exec. He was like a big wig or whatever, in the music industry and stuff, and like a producer and all that stuff. And he did fall from grace, for lack of a better term. So he basically blames K. Michelle for that, for lying. And she was telling him, like, you have a way of telling your story, making you the victim, and never taking accountability for how you got yourself in this situation. Like, how did you dig yourself in that hole to where this happened? You did something to get into that situation, but you're consistently pointing the finger at other people for it. You need to kind of accept some responsibility for your actions, He just kept talking about how he was I'm so hurt from losing my job as a producer. And she I need him to understand that it's more than that. You're not only hurting from that, you're also hurting from your daddy, who you've never voiced how he left this world. You never addressed it, and that could be the reason you have all this bad behavior doing other things. So she then had some out in the backyard basically digging holes. I'm like, he don't get where she going with this. He don't even get it. So she asked him, she pulls up some flashcards, and it has the words, facade, fantasy, fearful. And, she says basically his facade is the facade he put forth once his father was murdered. He put a facade up that nothing ever happened. He was living a fantasy world where he figured he can just do all these drugs and, live a normal life. And you can't. Okay, you really can't do that, because you live this facade of your father, of not speaking of what happened with your father. You had this whole fake life that you suppress all these emotions and memories and things. Then your whole fantasy world was, I can do all these drugs and I'll be really, really normal. But you can't, and you ain't, because you're doing this crazy shit. And then, fearful, he kept saying, I'm fearful that I won't get the chance to create music because, again, I was being lied on. And I'm like, bruh, stop blaming K. Michelle, because at the end of the day, if she lied or not, something happened. And sometimes the reason you lose everything is because you keep fighting the inevitable, and just maybe just saying sorry. Yes, something happened and it shouldn't have happened, but it was a whole fight that he kept trying to do that made things get worse, basically. And she then had some step into the hole that he buried, that he dug. Get into these holes that you dug for yourself. And she put him in them, and she buried his feet, and said, when you blame others, you put yourself in this hole. Like, you dug yourself in this own hole, and now you have to kind of just sit here and get out of this hole you dug for yourself. And he was in there for a minute, but he eventually dug his way out with his hands. And she says, I didn't get any tools to get out of it, but look what you did. You were able to get out of those holes you dug. And for me, it was a way to make him understand, you put yourself in these situations. You have to know to accept that you put yourself in these situations and get the fuck out of them, and stop living in them or expecting someone else to get you out of them. And I thought that was a good thing. But again, I felt like in a way he wasn't fully there and understanding what she was saying. He got it, but he didn't get it at the same time. I think because he kept saying, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And that's why I say I wonder if it was just a thing for him to be on another reality show. I'm not sure. I felt realness from Iyanla. I felt realness from his mom. I felt realness from his sister, and also his cousin who was there. But something about him, there was something blocking a connection, in my opinion, from him. We see his sister, who's there too. And as I said, she's 33. And she also has not dealt with her father being murdered. When your parent passes away, it's this thing of you have to give your pain a voice. You have to let it out in some sort of way. You have to grieve it. And the daughter, in her own way, couldn't even really say anything about it. All she could say very quietly was, I don't want to talk about it. I can't really deal with it. And it was a thing of Iyanla realizing you living in the same pain your brother is, except your brother uses drugs and alcohol to mask it. You live it on you live it in your emotions. You know what I'm saying? You're this quiet storm waiting to, release this pain. And we then see the sister who is like, I don't want to be here. I can't do this. I'm ready to go. Let's just leave. Let's just leave. And she's crying to Memphitz and let's just leave. Let's just leave. And she wasn't upset. She wasn't angry. She just wasn't ready to deal with those. My leg was itching. She wasn't ready to deal with those emotions, because dealing with the emotion of losing a parent, when I tell you that shit will man, look. By the grace of God, am I able to live this new normal life where a piece of me is missing, which is my father. So it's very difficult to give those emotions words, to let it out. So I could oh my God, I was crying so bad. I can completely feel her, because she just didn't know how to voice it. So, as he's holding his sister, he said to her, I want to go too, but we can't. We have to do this. And that's the one time I said, okay, he's letting a little bit of himself out. Like he's not just saying okay and going with things. He's kind of, because it was a moment with his sister, and the mom was in the room, the cousin's in the room, and Iyanla says to the mom, you have to let your kids know it's okay for them not to be okay. Because the reason that the sister wanted to leave was because she wasn't okay with how she was feeling about her father. And sometimes when a person feels like I have to be okay, when you don't feel okay, you don't want to deal with the emotion. And she's like, it's okay to not be okay. It's completely normal to be that way, because dealing with a parent's death is never easy. We see Iyanla take the sister outside, and she kind of just lets her breathe through it and talk through it. And she said, I just don't like to talk about it. And she's like, it's okay to give those those feelings sounds and words. And you hear her give her pain words. She's crying out. And not, man, look, there is a sound that a person who lost a parent has, and I remember the sound twice. The first time I remember the sound is the first moment the doctors told my family my father passed away, and the screams that came out of us. That's the first time. And the second time I remember hearing it was at my father's funeral. And I was sitting there, and when Iyanla was telling the sister, you're not breathing, you have to breathe. You're not breathing, you have to breathe and let it out. And I remember my auntie, my dad's sister, saying the exact same thing to me. Jay, you're not breathing, Jay. Jay, you gotta breathe. You gotta breathe, baby. I remember her saying them words to me, because I wasn't breathing. Because I couldn't give that pain. I'm not gonna do it. I couldn't give that pain words. And I remember hearing it when I let it out. And it's this wail of a noise. It's like a wailing cry that because Karla was at the funeral, my people who were at the funeral who weren't with me in the front said they heard me in the back, because I let it out. And it was the same thing. I think it was a bit worse than what Memphitz did in this scene, or the sister did, but I remembered it, because it's the moment of breathing, and because you breathe and you let it out. And so it was cool to see that the sister, was able to let it out and give it work. Because you have to get, and I tell people all the time, I say, when I've had friends whose parents have passed away, And I always tell them, you have to breathe through the pain. And someone said to me, I didn't get what you meant by that until I did it. And when they breathed through their pain, they were able to get it out of their system. And every once in a while, I can be at my house chilling or whatever, and I will just have to and let it out. And I've seen Iyanla teach them that. And for that reason, I'm like, Iyanla, for the most part, when she's doing what she's doing, she knows what she's advising them on. Because I ain't met that lady not one time in my life, but the exact way she was telling them to deal with their pain of losing their father was the exact same things I made myself do, and it made me be better. You know what I'm saying? It released some of that off of me. And, so I know, Lord, I got all of my own stuff. Anywho, so we then see her sitting and she's talking to the mom, and she's telling the mother, you can't mother your grown son the same way you mothered him when he was a baby, because he's a grown man now, and it's a completely different parenting style. I think some parents don't get that, and that's why some kids grow up and they're goddamn grown adult babies, because the parents are still treating them as kids. She said, he's a grown man, you can't be there to take care of him. You can advise him and, give him insight on things he can be and how to do as an adult man, but you can't baby him. You can't mother him in the same way as if he was 7 years old. I'm like, I hope all the mothers hear this and understand that is the absolute true thing. It doesn't mean that you are any less of their mother, but it means they're a grown man. You can't baby them. You just can't. She brings up how I feel like he actually needs rehab, because he's been doing drugs to cope with his father's murder for 16 years, and he think it's all cool or whatever, and it's really not. We then see her going to talk to Myth again, and, telling him that, she can see that he still is incomplete without his father. And when she said it, I think him hearing her say those words, a sound came up out of him. It was like a grumble. It was like a grunt. And this is when I started feeling he was being absolutely real, when he started making his body and his mind and his soul was reacting to what she was saying. And it was stuff because he had these feelings buried so deep down that it was coming just to bubble up a little bit. And, it was a grumble. He was like, oh, that came up out, because it's things that he's been holding on to that she was saying that it was ruffling stuff up inside him, and he's holding in all that goddamn pain that he has not expressed in 16 years. And you can see that he was trying to deal with the emotions inside him and kind of not let them really come out, because the minute she took a cover off of something that was sitting there, and he looked, and it was a funeral wreath with his father's obituary in it, and he looked at it, his eyes, it was like he was shocked, and he turned away, couldn't look, and his whole body reacted. And he was crying. He was like, I don't want to do this. He does do it, and he says how he's still angry that his father isn't there, because she said to him, talk to your father, talk to him. And he probably hasn't done that in a while, in a sober mass, probably. She had the sister come in and sit with him as he goes through this, because he was crying, as he, tears, and it was a real moment. It wasn't a yes ma'am, no ma'am thing. It wasn't a let me say what I think they want me to say. It was an absolutely real moment. And, he goes into say how he's, I'm angry you wasn't here. I know it was not your fault that you left me, but I still blame you for leaving me. And, he says how I take drugs to cope and forget about you and forget about it and how I feel. And, I feel like I do need help, but I can't ask mom for help because you don't talk to me how you used to talk to me. And he just had this honest conversation with his father that he probably wanted to have his whole life since his father's been dead, basically. Even said how he just wanted to make his dad happy. And it was, oh my God, I was crying so hard. Because he, I think for the first time, realized what he's been holding back and what he's been dealing with, or better yet, not dealing with all these years, and just vocalizing how he know he isn't living up to the expectation his father would want him to. He even said that. I looked up and seen that it said, Mickey Senior, and I'm Mickey Junior, and I'm not being the best. I'm not representing him in the best way I can. And so him having to deal with the emotions, and as he was talking, again, she kept saying, breathe through it, breathe. Because again, when you are in those moments of just total and utter heartbreak over a person who isn't here anymore, and that pain hits you, it takes your breath away. All you can do is breathe through it. And he was able to breathe through it and say what he had to say. She has him and the sister go out back to continue to breathe through, give these words and give these feelings sounds. And, he just kept saying, like, why? Why did you have to leave me? It was very appropriate. You know what I'm saying? And I think he needed it. I think the sister needed it. I think it was a great start to start the healing, and a great start to fix shit. People always think Iyanla's supposed to fix someone's life in one episode, and that isn't what it's about. I said that in my other video that I did for our show today. She isn't trying to fix people's lives in one episode. She's trying to get them started on fixing their life, and trying to get them to begin to fix their shit. You know what I'm saying? But you have to be open to starting to fix things. But you can't fix problems that a person's been dealing with for years and years and years in one day, in one episode, or in 2 days in 2 episodes. But you have to start somewhere. And what Iyanla does is she starts the process. You know what I'm saying? So yeah. The end of it was kind of, it was what it was. The ending was, she had to meet with a doctor because they think he needs rehab. And, I laughed because when he came in, they introduced him to the doctor. The doctor immediately gave him a car. I was like, man, don't get that man a car right now. But, she brings up how, you've been doing drugs for 16 years. We feel like you need rehab. And she's like, they have a space open for you at this person's clinic. What do you think about that? And he says, you know what, I feel like I'm not an addict. I really do. He's like, but what I hear y'all saying is, but no, he said, no, but what I understand is I have been using drugs to cope with this trauma for 16 years. They bring up how it will be a 30-day treatment, inpatient rehab. And he says, what I hear y'all saying is, y'all saying that I need help, even if I won't face the fact that I need help. I hear y'all saying that. And he says, but is it like jail? And he like, no, it's not like jail at all. Like, it's a luxury rehab. It's not like jail at all. And initially, he says how his mom comes in, his mom and sister and his cousin comes in, and they do say, I think it'll be a great thing. You have been doing drugs for all these years. It's possible that you need to go to rehab. Even if you feel you're not addicted, it can still help you to cope with the trauma of while you were doing drugs. And he says, I'm willing to do it. I'm willing to get, to do this and go back to square one. And the episode goes off. We then come to find out that he didn't even go to rehab. That he chose not to go. But the clinic where they offered him to go has an open spot for him when he's ready. And, it was a good episode. I felt like he was able to face some of his issues, but I do feel like he was also still very closed down. But I still like how Iyanla helped him face a little bit of his past. So I thought that was a really great thing. And then even how she made him acknowledge that he put himself in situations and he make himself play the victim, and he dig himself in his own holes, and he just need to stop doing that and just get out of the shit his damn self. So again, I thought it was a really cool episode. I cannot wait to see part 2 of the 5 brothers that comes on next week. So we shall see that. But other than that, I'm thirsty and I'm tired. It's currently 3:43 a.m., my people. Why is it 3:43? Because the damn time went up. Damn it, man. Anyway, I am Jay Lee. This is Jay Lee's Corner. Peace.